Warriors, welcome back to Gods of Alliance. If you're here, it means you want power, knowledge, and control over the battlefield. This is not luck. This is strategy. Let's break the game together. And today, we are stepping into something that has the potential to reshape how control is played in this game. Because Tempus was already a problem. A hero built around time, disruption, delay, control over tempo, control over decisions, control over the moment where fights are won or lost. But now, with relics entering his kit, this is no longer just control. This is evolution. And before we go deeper, I want to be clear about one thing. This is not the final verdict. We are not here to overreact. We are not here to hype blindly. We are here to understand what's coming. So when it arrives, we are ready. Because that's the difference between players who follow the meta and players who shape it. So let's break this down properly. We start with Chrono Field. At first glance, it looks simple. An aura around Tempus that increases magic penetration for himself and allies within the area. But this is not just a stat boost. This is direction. Because Tempus was never about raw damage. He was about control, about slowing the fight down, about breaking timing. Now, he starts enabling damage, and that changes everything. Because when you add magic penetration into a controlled environment, you're not just helping your team hit harder. You're helping them hit at the perfect moment, when the enemy is already disrupted, already delayed, already vulnerable. And this is where synergy begins to form, because control plus penetration means every second of delay becomes more valuable. Every missed timing from the enemy becomes more punishing. So this first relic already shifts Tempus from pure control into control plus amplification. And then we move into Withering. And this is where the pressure starts to build, because now it's not just about controlling space, it's about weakening enemies directly. Enemies in front of Tempus are now debuffed, which means their ability to respond, to survive, to fight back is reduced before they even get the chance. And when you combine this with Chrono Field, you start to see the pattern. Control the fight, reduce the enemy's strength, increase your team's damage, and do it all at the same time. This is not layered randomly. This is structured pressure. This is the kind of design that builds advantage second by second until the fight starts slipping away from the opponent. And then we reach time paradox. And this is where the identity of Tempus begins to expand even further. Because now we introduce continuous damage. Enemies inside the controlled area take damage over time, not burst. Not a single moment, but constant pressure. And this matters more than people think. Because in Hero Wars, burst damage can be mitigated, timing can be recovered, windows can be reset. But constant damage, constant pressure, combined with control, is something much harder to escape. Because now, the enemy is not just delayed. They're losing health while being delayed. They are being punished for being inside the fight. And that changes positioning. It changes decisions. It forces movement, mistakes, panic. And this is exactly where Tempus becomes uncomfortable to play against. Because you're not just reacting to him, you're being forced to play around him. And then we reach the final relic, Time Rebound. And this is the moment where everything flips. Because until now, Tempus was controlling the fight. Now, he starts punishing the enemy for trying to control him. Any enemy that applies crowd control to Tempus gets hit with chronostasis in return. So think about what that means in real fights. The enemy tries to stop Tempus, and instead, they stop themselves. They lose their own timing. They lose their own control. They lose the initiative. And this creates something extremely dangerous, because now Tempus is no longer just controlling tempo. He is protecting it. He is turning defensive reactions into offensive punishment. And this is where high-level gameplay shifts. Because control heroes usually have one weakness, end quote. They can be counter-controlled. But now, that interaction becomes risky. That interaction becomes dangerous. And that means Tempus gains freedom. Freedom to stay active. Freedom to maintain control. Freedom to dictate the fight longer than before. And when you connect all of this together, the picture becomes very clear. Chrono Field enables damage. Withering weakens the enemy. Time Paradox applies constant pressure. Time Rebound punishes counterplay. This is not a random set of upgrades. This is a system. A system that controls, amplifies, pressures, and protects itself. And that's why we are not rushing conclusions. Because something like this cannot be judged on paper alone. This needs testing. Real teams, real matchups, real fights. We need to see how this interacts with burst teams, with sustained teams, with control mirrors, with different factions. We need to understand where Tempus fits and where he breaks the game. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to test everything. We're going to push him to the limit. We're going to find the truth behind the numbers, behind the design, behind the theory. So if you want to stay ahead, if you want to understand this before the meta shifts, if you want to see how to actually use this, make sure you subscribe. Follow the journey, because this is just the beginning. Warriors, this is how we play the game. Not randomly, not blindly, with knowledge, with precision, with control. We don't guess, we don't assume, we test, we learn, and we master. Let's break the game together.